Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the Peak to Peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. I'm Cynthia Davis.
And I'm Art DeVitalis. This is a weekly podcast where we'll bring you stories from community members and moments happening in time across the Peak to Peak.
Our focus will be local news, law enforcement, music, entertainment, and culture. We'll have the occasional segment on history, and we'll work to keep everyone up to date on calendar events and other news briefs.
But first, a word from the Mountaineer newspaper publisher Barbara Hardt and how all this got started.
I am Barbara Hardt. I am the publisher of the Mountaineer newspaper. We cover the news of the Peak to Peak region from Allens Park to Central City and Blackhawk, all the little towns in between, and the canyons down to the foothills. 5 canyons, plus the one that goes across. We're nestled right up into the Continental Divide. We go up to Eldora. We're touching on the edge of it. The Mountaineer has published its first edition in October of 1977. It's kind of been the cornerstone of news in the Peak to Peak region since then. I used to read the Mountaineer when I moved here in 1986, but I didn't become part of the Mountaineer until Halloween of 2006. All of the business side of the paper. Black and white to begin with, and it moved to color before I bought it. For over 20 years, it's been publishing in color.
Thank you, Barb. And how will the podcast be able to help the community connect?
Just continuing to cover hyper-local news, not allowing it to morph into something that covers outside our region. We really want to cover what's happening directly around us and not go farther than that. And I think it makes us more relevant to the communities that we live in and cover in our area, which is just a huge, expansive area across the mountains over here.
For the future, we'll continue the tradition of community coverage established by the works of the writers and staff of the Mountaineer newspaper.
We have quite a few social media pages. Facebook is our most used. That is themountaineer.com. We have Instagram, LinkedIn. We are working on TikTok. That's a new one for us. The paper is in print. It's online on our website as a PDF. And then our website is themountaineer.com.
Now, to kick things off, for our lead story, music correspondent Dango Rose talked to Pete Fiori about the adaptation of live music at the Caribou Room. The venue adopted new ways of operating through rain, shine, and pandemic this summer.
My name is Dango Rose, and with me today is Pete Fiori, owner, operator, sound man extraordinaire, engineer, technician up at the Caribou Room in Nederland, Colorado. Thanks for joining us today, Pete.
Thanks for having me, Dango. Thanks for having me.
Today we're really focusing on music venues, the entertainment industry in the time of COVID.
What's left of them?
What's left of it, right? Up at the Caribou Room in Nederland, it's a small town up in the mountains outside of Boulder, Colorado. Incredibly storied history. You kind of made it work this summer in a sense.
Yeah, we got lucky and we kind of figured some stuff out quickly. After the doomsday, March 12th, when everything ended, we all stopped and everybody stopped and canceled all the shows. Everything stopped. And of course, as everyone remembers, we all kind of freaked out and we were disinfecting our mail as it came into our house and everything. But about 6 weeks in, speaking to Kimba, our talent buyer and manager, she's pretty much my partner in crime, we realized we had to do something. So we have a kitchen and we have a wonderful chef in Lauren Knight. And so we started delivery. And so we were delivering and Kimba would come back and she'd say, look, I'm seeing people who haven't seen anybody for 2 months, and we're actually doing something that's kind of important, I think. I realized that, hey, we could still do something outdoors. And as the science was coming in, we could do the social distancing thing, which was new words for everybody. But we were fortunate enough to have a large parking lot up there at the Caribou Room. My son was jamming with his friends, and I said, okay, why don't you guys play some music? And the town was nice enough to let us do that. It quickly evolved. Immediately, people were just starved for something to do. And it was somewhat social, even though we were really uptight about people staying apart, keeping in their own little social circles and pods. We had social circles, and then we had parking spaces. I had 20-foot by 20-foot parking spaces, and I think we ended up being able to fit about 45 cars in there, and with 4 people in a car, and then about 7 or 8 social circles. But it ended up being where we could sell maybe 150 tickets, and then sell food and drink, get everyone paid. The musicians were ecstatic. We're definitely going to be doing that in 2021 if Nederland is amicable for that. So we'll see.
You were kind of one of the first pioneers of the drive-in pod type show experience.
I don't think I knew anybody else who was doing it. We saw somebody in Connecticut who was doing it at the same time, and cheesy bands like Journey cover bands and Styx cover bands. It was really wild. It's like, what the hell are they doing? What do we do about bathrooms? I mean, bathrooms is a real consideration, and as it turns out, this thing, the aerosols, is really how COVID's spreading. It's spreading through the air, and so we had all these little challenges that we worked through, and we'd be leaving porta potty doors open, and we'd disinfect the porta potty after each use and things like that. But I think next year, and venues like Mishawaka, they started doing things. They started selling tickets, and they started really doing it because they're a real outdoor venue, and they had a real stage with the real lights and real sound out there. We were just kind of doing temporary stuff. It turns out that their business model is very interesting to look at because they're selling full tables at $50 a head. That's where I think it's going to be moving, at least for next summer. Is you're going to see some very high ticket prices for boutique shows instead of having a flush crowd right up front screaming at you. Those days are over for the foreseeable future. It's going to be more of a sit down, listen kind of music, and stand up at your table and dance if you want, but very awkward, I think, for the players when you get to the end of the song. And I really noticed this with streaming. So you get to the end of the song or the end of the set or whatever, and it's birds chirping, you can hear a pin drop, and it catches the musicians off guard. They're like, they've just poured their heart into a performance, and song that they wrote, you're expected to hear the applause, and so it's just this vacuum that occurs.
I remember the first time I actually went to a social gathering after the initial first sort of phase, almost like shock and awe, how do we live now, passed. It was in May, end of May. Being present with other people, mostly social distance, some people not, but at that time, just being in the presence of other people around music and just gathering and camaraderie and community, it actually shocked my system.
That first month, I don't think a band played without crying. Once at the venue, at least during, we get choked up when they were like, we haven't played music in front of people in 3 months, 3 or 4 months. And this is amazing. And, if this had been the same show 3 years ago, you'd be like, well, this is pretty janky here. You got a little pop-up tent and a couple 12-inch speakers, and they're calling it a show. Well, now, everyone's like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's so much fun. And, that's so great. And
yeah, it kind of shifts the narrative and changes the plot. Like you're saying, like the satisfaction or like the gratitude level for just having the possibility to have an experience with music. And at this point, it's almost more at the community level, throwback to how it was a long time ago.
It plays into the whole sustainability discussion. The 3 parts of sustainability be economic sustainability and environmental sustainability. The third leg of sustainability is social sustainability. You really, to have a community, you have to have this social interaction, and it has to be there. Otherwise, you've just got a bunch of people living in their houses and not taking care of each other. I think that there's a need that's become evident with not just music, but I mean, music is, of course, what I see because that's what I do. For all kinds of performance art, any kind of art, anything that involves gathering of people where you have an artist who is trying to convey either an emotion or an intellectual idea, this is all changed, and it still has to happen. Music is a necessity, and what's interesting is that this is now a time for innovation. We might do a masquerade ball where you actually embrace the mask, something from Venice, Italy, or New Orleans, where you really go all out on your mask and you try to stay anonymous. We've got to keep innovating because there's no keeping people apart. The trick is to now let people get together, but also keeping them safe. The gate at the parking lot, all that money goes to the musicians generally. Musicians and the infrastructure of the management around the musicians. So the only way these venues like mine make money is by selling drinks mostly and food. And ticket prices are going to go to the point where even for these small shows, it's going to be like as if venues like Red Rocks, that $100 would get you a ticket into Red Rocks and it'll get you some dinner for you and your date and get you several beers and you're good. You spent $100 and you've had a great night. Now I think that if you want that same experience, you're spending twice that. This will open the door for less expensive acts and more indie acts because then people want to be able to have a couple dollars left over after they go see live music. I think there's opportunity here for the younger startup guys who are playing.
I just found a letter from 2007 that I wrote our booking agent at the time. His name is Phil Einstein. It was thanking him for booking the tour, asking him to believe in the band Elephant Revival, and letting him know that in the future 10% would surely be more than $225.
Right, yeah. Well, now 10%, I don't know, I think that a lot of the management around music, right? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. I think that these people are in the biggest shock because everybody's looking to get by the middleman. And I'm not going to say any names, but we had a few bands this summer when they came up. I literally would pull them aside and say, look, why are you doing this through your booking agency? Why am I still paying for your manager too? Why are we doing that when we're all just scraping by here and you guys need to pay for your gas to get up here and you have rent and bills to pay?
I just think about our management agency and their bus company that they started and the tour bus industry. You were talking about production companies like your own, how the trend is actually potentially going for bigger productions. Not
right. No, isn't that fascinating? So at least for 2021, the drive-in concert, who knows if this is going to really work. I mean, it worked for Billy Strings. It is happening. Believe it or not, I think your next Fish show is going to be a drive-in concert. What that means to production, to kind of switch gears here, because Caribou isn't my only gig. Production was my original gig for the last 35, 40 years, doing festivals and stuff. What's interesting now is that we have to cover a lot more ground for the same amount of tickets sold. So I could take 4,000, 10,000 people for a festival and cram them in to a 300 by 200 foot space. Well, now you can't do that. And so it's what's interesting speaking to other sound company owners that I know, and we were just kind of talking about what the future is going to look like. Everyone's pretty depressed, but then the truth that comes out of it is that, hey, we have to get big. We're going to need big video screens. We're going to need lots of sound that covers large areas. There's a lot of technical issues when you think about using the radio in their cars. That doesn't work. Very interestingly enough, I think in 2021, the shows are going to just be big. We're still going to be separated. We're going to still have a little pod, your COVID pod of your friends that you've broken quarantine with. And there's families, so to speak. You're going to have 2 to 3 families that, okay, these people have all decided if one of us gets it, we all get it. That's going to stay. The norm is that we're going to have these groups, these small groups. If you want to sell 4,000 tickets, you're going to have a lot more space, actual physical space to put all these people in and keep them separated. So you're going to need a bigger light show. You're going to need a lot more sound. You're going to need a lot of video just to
Yeah, and then like story time interwoven in between.
Perfect. That's what I'm talking about. You got to fill that space, and you've got to change what the show is.
Mm-hmm.
And certain performers, when you think about it, John Hartford, people like that, who really were storytelling when they were playing. That type of performance is really going to, I think, be more modernized.
To the news desk. The Gilpin Food Pantry put together 225 boxes for local residents this holiday season. Pickup was Tuesday, December 22nd. Families with kids also received toys from the annual toy drive.
Recently, the Love and Cup Community Kitchen provided more than 100 individuals with food over the Christmas holiday. Volunteers contributed meal items like cookies and vegetables for a medley. The main dish was honey ham, turkey, or lasagna. The community kitchen served a similar amount this year during Thanksgiving, ensuring many had a warm meal on the holiday. Brightwood Music in Nederland has instruments of all kinds in stock. The store is conveniently located at 20 East Lakeview Drive, Suite 109. When you buy an instrument from Brightwood, it comes complete with setup by a professional staff member. They also offer repair on all any stringed fretless or fretted instruments.
Your newest music maker is waiting to be picked up. The store is open weekly Wednesday through Sunday, so stop, try something out, and stay and play a while. Or if you're more comfortable with a private socially distant appointment, call 303-258-8863. Stop by at Brightwood Music on Facebook for daily deals and updates. A note from the publisher here. The Mountaineer would like to extend special thanks to everyone that donated to the News Colorado Needs matching grant opportunity. The newspaper received a $5,000 match in donations. The money not only ensures the continuation of our print edition, but we're now able to offer your news through the additional platform of this podcast. A heartfelt thanks goes out to everyone that continues to support homegrown journalism, created by locals, for locals.
Now, for our weekly business profile, we talked to Jeff Green about the history of the Very Nice Brewing Company.
My name is Jeffrey Green. I am the co-owner with my wife, Susan Green, of the Very Nice Brewing Company in Nederland, Colorado. We are working on our 9th year, so we just celebrated our 8th in October. We're a very small batch brewery. Our brew system, our brew house, is 3.5 barrels, so we brew about 100 gallons of beer at a time. We started small, which we're glad we did because all of our mistakes were small. I think if we started big, our mistakes would have been big. In the beginning, then you better have some really experienced people, whether it's brewing or anything else, so that you don't make those costly mistakes when you're big. We just kind of grew, and our customers grew with us. We started in 2012, and there was still a lot of grace to be had for being a new brewery. I think so many startup breweries and so many breweries in general, I don't know if they would tolerate less than stellar beer. When we started out, I'll be fully honest, we did not have stellar beer. I'd like to think that we had good beer with a lot of potential, a lot of things that were interesting about it. But I was very green. Susan was very green. Almost 9 years later, I would put our beer up against anything that's out there right now. I think our beer really is on that stellar level.
Jeff talked about a local campaign in support of small businesses that started at the brewery.
We've had this charity beer program that we've been super proud of for years. I mean, it's really been the crown jewel in our little thing here. We donate $1 for every pour. So whether it's a 16-ounce pour or 4-ounce pour, we donate $1 for every pour. We did get a small business loan in the beginning. We just didn't feel right fiscally responsible by giving away money when we were taking loans. Well, how else can we still give to the community? I just thought of our label and the label as a really nice venue for disseminating images and logos and got a lot of local artists that have designed our labels, and they get all sorts of exposure because their art is on these labels, which we're putting out in dozens. We thought, well, we can do the same thing, and we'll just put small business logos on it. We won't charge anything, and we'll just let the folks whose business it is completely decide what goes on there. You know, we just said, send us a design, send us the logo, send us a tagline, picture, whatever you want, and we'll put anything that you think will promote your small business, and we'll put it on the label. So we just felt it was a great way to keep giving back without having to give out borrowed money.
And here's what's in store for the company that started from humble beginnings between Jeff and Susan.
We have been able to do some really fun beers because our beer supply, being a small batch brewery, our beer supply is always running low. And that's obviously very thankful that people like to drink it. But it's really a function of how small our batches are. With this slowdown, what we've been able to do is experiment with some really crazy tastes that I wouldn't necessarily have the fermenter space to play with. Our wood-aged mezcal stout coming out here called the Mezcal Bastards with orange and poblano, chili, and a bunch of mezcal flavor, and aged on Spanish cedar. Anniversary beer, which was a similar beer, but instead of mezcal and Spanish cedar, it was oak and bourbon. Our main news is we're still pushing ahead with building a new brewery out in Gilpin. We bought a piece of land in 2016. Amazingly enough, we were able to convince the bank that we were still going to be very, very valuable after COVID, and that we had the ability to make a bigger brewery successful. We're still planning on building that brewery come spring. Our webpage is www.verynicebrewing.com. We also do Facebook. We do the Twitter. We put ourselves out there. So, you know, if you do a Google search for Very Nice Brewing, I'm sure you'd be able to find whatever you wanted on us.
Thank you, Jeff. And we look forward to the classics and upcoming brews.
For the end-of-the-year wrap-up, Nederland Police Marshal Larry Johns delivered the community report with the following information.
With regard to travel, the pandemic slowed down interstate tourism, but it appears to have boosted front range tourism into the mountain communities.
The department hired Officer Fine Lovin, a welcome addition to the Nederland Police and town.
With regard to community outreach, the department continues its dedication working with Pastor Hansen and Claudia Schaffler and Nietzsche to assist homeless in immediate need while minimizing impacts to the community.
And now let's take a look at things to look forward to in 2021 for the NPD. The police department will develop town hall style meetings at the community center as public health orders allow, and market the new Smart 911 program to citizens in the Nederland area.
For our final story, we spoke to Carla, director of the Carousel of Happiness nonprofit organization. She tells us the story of the Carousel.
My name is Carla Johnson-Grimes, and I'm the director at the Carousel of Happiness in Nederland, Colorado. Well, I guess I've been here almost 4 months. Mm-hmm. I have a pretty extensive background in nonprofit management and fundraising. I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to be able to come here and work at the Carousel, and I absolutely love it. I think it's amazing and one of the most magical places I've ever been. So the Carousel of Happiness is over a 100-year-old carousel that is here in Nederland. It was brought here by Scott Harrison, the founder, and he carved new animals for it. There's a fish and a cow, a zebra, an alpaca, a bear, a gorilla, just all sorts of wonderful, wonderful animals. It took over 25 years. Over 10 years ago, started raising money to build a building here in Nederland for the Carousel. We've been in existence now 10 years. This past year is our 10-year anniversary. People come from all over the world, or at least they did before COVID, to ride the Carousel. Families, people of all ages, come. We have birthday parties here. We've had weddings here, just all sorts of wonderful magical events, and people that come weekly on Sunday to ride. And we have people that are tourists that they come and they stop through Nederland on their way somewhere. And it's this wonderful, wonderful range.
Though limited by COVID-19 to 9 passengers, the carousel is still in operation for those that stop by 20 Lakeview Drive in Nederland.
We've been fortunate enough during COVID to be able to implement some strategies and safety procedures that, unfortunately, we can't have as many people ride at a time, but we can still be up and running, and people can feel safe. You know, they can wear masks. We have only 9 people on the carousel at a time, but they can still ride. Well, so one of the things that we like to do is try to partner with organizations that make sense to us. So Scott, who founded the organization, is a veteran. So, you know, we like to partner with veterans organizations, and we are working on partnerships with the Nederland School District. Right now, that's something that we want to work on and kind of implement. So we have a Facebook page, the Carousel of Happiness Facebook page. We also have Instagram, and our website is www.carouselofhappiness.org. We just encourage people to come up and enjoy and ride the carousel, explore Nederland. The Nederland community is amazing and just so supportive of the carousel. Come up, have lunch, ride the carousel, walk around, just enjoy.
She also had this to add about the board of directors and the nonprofit.
So one of the great things about the carousel, well, there's so many, but one of the great things is the staff and the board. The staff that work here are beyond amazing. They love being here. I mean, it really is a happy place. And the board is super supportive, very engaged. It's like this perfect storm of wonderful entertainment.
Find out more by visiting carouselofhappiness.org. We'll wrap up this week's episode with one final announcement. As much as Arthur and myself would love to deliver this mountain news to people across the peaks, we are very busy with our own local news podcast. So for now, consider us as just filling in, which means we are currently holding an open audition for that perfect host. Here's Art to explain who might best fit this role.
A host is there to be the voice of the news and one that has a genuine love of the area. Some of the other requirements do include a clear diction and pleasant delivery, and you must have the ability to record with a good mic either through a computer or a laptop. In other words, we will need good sound quality.
If interested, call 303-810-5409 and leave a brief message with your contact information. You can also email us at publisher1977@gmail.com with the subject heading Host.
And that's all for this episode of the Mountaineer Podcast.
Pick up this week's print edition of The Mountaineer or go online to www.themountaineer.com, and that is THEMTNEAR.com, to catch up on more local news. I'm Cynthia Davis.
And I'm Art DeVitalis. Thank you for listening and have a safe and happy New Year.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local peak-to-peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.